Hi guys, my name's Dav and welcome to D&DGaming. If this is your first time visiting our channel, we provide honest and in-depth game reviews on a wide range of PC games and review them from the perspective of two experienced gamers. We highly recommend you click that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our up and coming game reviews. If you find you like this review, remember to give it a thumbs up by hitting that like button. With that said, in for review this time around is story-driven exploration game The First Tree. Reviewing a game with me, as usual, is my brother Dale.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. First Tree is a third-person exploration game developed and published by David Wehle. I don't know how to pronounce his surname. It was released in September 2017 for PC, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. It was then ported to Nintendo Switch in November 2018 and then iOS and Android in November 2020. The game centers around two parallel stories, a fox trying to find her missing family and a son reconnecting with his estranged father in Alaska. Players take control of the fox on a dreamlike journey. Along the way, players can uncover artifacts and stories from the son's life as he becomes intertwined in the fox's journey towards the first tree. So, Dev, what were your first impressions?
Well, I didn't have any preconceptions before going into this one, and it's kind of hard from the title to get an idea of what type of game it actually is, but the cover shows a fox, so it's quite obvious from the outset that it focuses around the fox. Before we go any further, just an important note to mention that the story in this game is about dealing with grief and around the loss of a parent. Both Dale and I know what this feels like because we've both been there. We do critique this game quite harshly in the review, but not through a lack of understanding the poignancy of the story. We are critical, but from the point of view of two gamers that expect appropriate levels of quality, quantity and content in gaming.
Yeah, so in terms of my first impressions, I had no idea what to expect going into this one. I wasn't expecting AAA quality gameplay and storytelling, but then I also wasn't expecting, well, this. So what were your general thoughts following your playthrough?
This isn't a game. Trust me, it's a story rammed down your ears whilst you run around as a fox. I mean, seriously, listen to these reviews. A tranquil and personal journey through a magical shifting landscape.
I thoroughly enjoyed galloping around its gorgeous pastoral landscapes and moonlit moors, uncovering snippets of narrative, all the while battling the ever-growing lump in my throat.
The First Tree offers a beautiful, pensive break from everyday life. The game I've just played, you can see on screen now, does not even come remotely close to matching the description of these reviews. I'll explain more shortly, but no surprises. As you can hear from the tone of my voice, I'm going to be ripping into this one.
This is another one of those games that is basically interactive storytelling. It's not really a walking simulator type game as such, but certainly close to one, except you play as a fox for some reason. I didn't really enjoy it much at all, if I'm honest. The only real standout for me was the nice music, but the story really didn't do it for me, unfortunately. I know what they're going for here, and you know, as we touched on the point about it being about grief, but really I think it could have been done in a much better way. Let me just explain by saying, you know, when someone's talking too much and there's that expression where you say, yeah, I don't need your life story, thanks. Well, this game is that someone, and the game is their life story.
So in terms of graphic options, these are very limited, just graphic quality, resolution and anti-aliasing.
Yeah, not much to add there. Limited options, but I guess about as expected for the type of graphics.
So in terms of graphics and graphics performance, we'll put our PC specs up on screen as usual, but the game ran well on my PC with no noticeable graphical issues. The graphics themselves are shit, but to be expected from an indie game developed in the Unity engine, so no surprises here. Graphics don't make a game though, so I won't mark it down for that.
They are quite basic graphics. I didn't think they looked too bad, to be honest. The style is okay, basic, but the problem is, as usual, the design of the fox itself was very jagged edges and just wasn't particularly nice. Some of the backgrounds were okay and the lighting effects, but overall, yeah, just very basic. It did run well on my PC though, with no issues at all.
So in terms of player controls, well, these are clunky as fuck on PC. I'm sure it's better played with a controller, but using WASD to move around, it's just not even close to a smooth movement. There's no key rebinding available either.
Yeah, they're really not great controls on PC. The janky control of the fox, which makes it gear to the left and right, it just really badly done, it might be better to use a controller if you have one, and hopefully that would be a smoother movement.
So in terms of the game story, so in the game, as we mentioned already, you play as a fox. However, there's two stories running in parallel as you play. A voiceover comes in, and whilst you're playing as a fox trying to find a lost cubs, the narrated story in the background is of a guy who's woken in the night and is reminiscing to his partner about the relationship that he had with his father. In terms of game mechanics, basically you walk or run around digging up items that are part of the memories of the narrator and collecting some stars, of which simply get you a Steam or Epic Game achievement if you collect enough of them.
Yeah, the objective is basically running around a variety of landscapes, collecting stars and listening to the story segments. The stars themselves are visible from a distance and quite spread out in places, so you will find yourself running a lot with, fortunately, nothing to do in between except jumping around for entertainment.
So in terms of UI, there's no UI other than the pop-up that tells you how many stars you collected when you collect a new one. Really basic.
Yeah, really nothing to add to that.
So what do you think in terms of sound and music?
I thought the music was nice enough. It does get a bit repetitive, and there's not an awful lot of variety, but it was quite pleasant to listen to. In terms of the sounds, well, the first thing that struck me was the noticeably amateur voice acting. I understand this is voiced by the developer himself and his wife, which is fair enough, to keep it to a budget, and he wanted that personal touch, but it was noticeable to me. I actually kind of laughed a little bit in the opening sequence, just because the story and the dialogue itself can be quite cringy at times.
Even at my most distant, at the times when I detested him the most, he kept reaching out. For a year straight, he asked me every week when we were going camping. I thought he was just dense. Eventually, to shut him up, I agreed.
Yeah, so in terms of sound and music, for me, quite nice music, was quite fitting for the game. Game sounds are basic, really, didn't really stand out to be particularly good, but at the same time, not bad. I guess they just did the job. Voice acting was okay, but as Dale's pointed out, it was quite cringy. But the story is about a guy who's lost his father and is quite downbeat at times, and I'm afraid to say quite depressing as well.
I'll never forget that wet stone on my feet, or how those massive mountains looked even bigger in the lake's reflection. I felt small, but grateful.
So did you find any bugs or glitches?
Well, I actually had quite a major one at the beginning, which was a save bug that I'll show on screen now. The game did actually save, thank fuck, because I really didn't want to repeat any of the game, but this message came up multiple times towards the beginning of the game.
There were no issues for me, fortunately. I actually just played it through in one sitting in the end, as I just wanted to kind of get through it, and so I didn't encounter any save issues.
So to sum up things I liked about the game, well, the story is poignant and will strike a chord with some people, I'm sure. The way it's told is quite inventive, with the unique entwinement with the Fox's story. I'm afraid to say that's all on my likes, though.
In terms of things I liked about it, again, not an awful lot to actually add here. Unfortunately, I guess it's kind of relaxing to play, and there's certainly no challenge to it, so you don't have to be fully switched on when you're playing it. You can just kind of chill and play it, and it's short. You can complete it in about an hour and a half. But yeah, I don't have much more positive to say about it, unfortunately.
So in terms of things I didn't like, well, here we go. This isn't a game. I'll break this down so you can get an understanding of where I'm coming from and my reasons for slating this unfinished looking early access shite. Environment, simply put, a bland selection of ground planes, in some places very badly elevated to create hills, mountains, as you can see from this clip, with different low resolution textures applied such as grass and snow. Trees have been thrown in with clearly barely a thought about how and where trees actually grow. This comes together to look like an early pre-alpha export from the game engine that you'd give to a family member to play or test version of the game before adding more content in. I've created similar environments like this messing about for fun in the Unreal Engine, and it's incredibly easy to do. The modifying tools for it, elevating the land, adding textures and placing trees and rocks are like painting by numbers. It's a piece of piss once you know what you're doing. Admittedly, that's the Unreal Engine. I've not used the Unity engine this game is created in, but from what I understand, it's not much different or any more difficult to use. What is difficult is creating an environment that's realistic, engaging, and full of life. The environment is this couldn't be further from that. You can create a similar environment to this in the Unreal Engine in about an hour if you know what you're doing. The lack of artistic and thoughtful application here makes me feel like the game has been made to take people's money and rip people off by giving you bare bones of a game in return. Controls clunky and have a lack of any feeling or connection to the Fox at all. Story implementation. As much as I included the story as part of my likes, I didn't like the way this was implemented. It ran down your throat by randomly coming with voiceovers as you move around and sometimes as you dig up the items. I think this would have been far better, consistently told as you as the fox dig up the items that remind the narrator of his father. This way the story would connect more with those items, and as a player you would also pay more attention to those items rather than, as I found, just digging them up and then running off to find the next one. Pressing a button to get a close-up of the items with the fox, say, sniffing around it or something like that would have provided far better interactivity and connection to the story too. There's no way near enough content here for the size of the level maps. Just digging up some of the items and collecting the stars is bare bones content, and as Dale pointed out earlier, the stars are really far apart, so you have to run for ages to get to them. There's no puzzles, no challenges, and far too much running around and nothing else. It can easily be completed in one single 2-hour session if you don't get so depressed in the meantime, and even trying to collect all the stars to get the achievements would barely drag it out more than 3 hours.
Yeah, in terms of things I didn't like, well, my biggest issue was really that there wasn't much of an actual game here, just extremely limited gameplay and very linear. It also just seemed a bit ridiculous at times. I mean, a fox that can double jump as high as a tree, basically. I mean, I know it has a kind of dreamlike state to the game, but it just seems silly. The clunky controls really didn't help, as you spend a significant amount of time running around. The walk function seemed largely redundant as well. It's really not clear where you're supposed to be going at times, as there's no map. You can get a little lost in some of the larger areas and start going around in circles if you're not careful, especially as a lot of the scenery and background starts to look the same in places. The platforming element of collecting the stars wasn't very good, I found, and was just very limited. Again, this was really the only objective in the game, and it introduced minor platforming elements, but very, very limited. So did you think there were any missed opportunities?
Well, firstly, more interaction with the fox through the controls, because this was just bare bones. I think more animations and things like that would have had much better interactivity and felt more connected to the fox as well. They really should have had more content, such as closer inspection of the items, as I mentioned earlier. This would have helped to create better interactivity and connection to the story. Puzzles and challenges, well, challenges such as digging up and collecting parts of items that need assembling to get the full story, or puzzles such as harder to find items, would have extended the game beyond the 2 hours, padded the game with more content, provided a challenge for players, and make it feel less like they're just trying to take your money for as little effort as possible.
In terms of my thoughts on missed opportunities, well, as I mentioned in my negatives, a map would be useful so you know how many stars there are left to collect. As it is, you don't know if you've got them all in a particular area before you move on, and you don't even know the size of that area, as it's really not clear. It has fairly obvious boundaries of like mountains or objects that you can't go over, but on some of these you can actually scale up quite a lot of them before you even realise you're not supposed to be going that way. It would also be useful to have a chapter select, so you could go back and replay certain sections to perhaps collect any stars you missed. So in terms of scores, Dav, what are you going to give this one?
I'm actually more disappointed than anything with this game. With its inventive parallel storytelling, it really could have been so much more than what it actually turned out to be, which I'm afraid, in my opinion, is an okay-ish narrated story with the backdrop of a bland and empty game engine export environment in pre-alpha looking status, lacking realistic detail, gameplay content, challenge and interactive controls. The only things that just about pick it up off the floor for me are its inventive storytelling and music, but these are still no way near enough to turn it round for me. First of all, I can't believe this is considered a finished game, and secondly, I can't come close to recommending this game to anyone, as if I did, I'd feel like I'm ripping those people off by recommending it to them. So I'm afraid it's a 2.5 out of 10 from me, lower than my score of Absu last week. I really didn't think that was possible.
So in terms of my score on this, well, the issue is I can't really recommend it at all, to be honest. I guess some people might get some satisfaction from listening to its story, but there is a severe lack of actual gameplay, hence why it seems to me just to be an interactive story where you basically run around doing nothing for about an hour and a half. It does feel unfinished, and you really aren't getting much for your money, so it's going to be a low 3 out of 10 from me.
Well guys, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment. Hit that bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video, and we'll see you in the next one.
I wasn't popular or unpopular. Maybe just forgettable.